What's up guys, my name is Ace, and welcome back to another gun guide. In today's episode, we're finally going to be wrapping up the current LMGs that we have available in the game with the XM325. We're going to be diving deep into the stats, and toward the end of the video, I'll be sharing a few excellent attachment combinations to try out. And starting it off, as always, let's have a look at our raw power potential. And with this gun, our rate of fire is 1,000 rounds per minute. Keeping in mind, there is currently something messed up with the advanced stats in-game. It's displaying it as only having like 750 rounds per minute for a rate of fire. That is not accurate to what you actually experience in-game. You will actually experience 1,000 rounds per minute. And this gun does have a small pre-fire delay at 20 milliseconds. So that means every time you pull the trigger, there will be a 20 millisecond delay before the first shot fires. As for our damage, this gun will be a 5 to 7 shot kill depending on the range, meaning our minimum time to kill potential to the body is 240 milliseconds, which is an excellent time to kill, keeping in mind that doesn't include the pre-fire delay, and you may want to add that on top for a more realistic time to kill in many situations at least. But even at 260 milliseconds, if we are adding that pre-fire delay, this is still an excellent time to kill for this game, and you will be competing quite nicely up close. And then even as you stretch your ranges out, we maintain an excellent time to kill potential relative to the other guns in the game. As for headshots, without the damage barrel equipped, we need 2 headshots mixed in with body shots in the first 2 damage ranges to reduce the number of shots to kill, which isn't too bad. Or you could use the damage barrel, and with that, up close, now you just need to mix 1 headshot in to cut that down to a 4-shot kill. And if you do manage to get a 4-shot kill with headshots, your new time to kill potential is 184 milliseconds, which is very, very fast. Now after that, let's have a look at our damage ranges, and as we can see here, while our damage ranges aren't quite as good as the Mark 78 or the Sokol, at least in the low RPM mode, at the end of the day, we've still got an excellent range profile relative to most of the other guns in the game. Our maximum damage range, so that 5-shot kill range, will extend out to about 36 meters, which will take care of most of the gunfights you would tend to find on the 6v6 maps in this game. And our bullet velocity is pretty good as well at 750 meters per second, giving us a hit scan range at 37.5 meters. Now, of course, if you want to increase your range or velocity values, here are all the values for the barrel. So the long barrel gives us a 25% boost to range, velocity barrel gives us a 25% boost to velocity, and the hybrid barrel gives us a roughly 13% boost to both. As for rapid fire, this will increase your rate of fire up to 1,071 rounds per minute for a new 5-shot time to kill at 224 milliseconds, which is very fast, but this does come at the cost of a 10% reduction to our range and velocity, and it also increases recoil. Next, let's have a look at hardcore game modes, and in hardcore, this is going to be a 1-shot kill to the body only in the first damage range, so out to 36 meters, which is an excellent damage range, by the way. I mean, it's still going to be a 1-shot kill more often than not, and also with how fast your fire rate is on this, it typically won't matter all that much if you need to land that second shot. So while it's not the best gun in hardcore game modes, it's certainly not bad by any means. Now after that, let's have a look at our Hipfire, which is the best in the LMG category. And it's so good that it actually matches some of the assault rifles in this game. And combine that with the fact that you have the very fast rate of fire, which tends to lead itself very well to Hipfire. And I would say this gun is excellent in the Hipfire department. Don't hesitate at all to Hipfire in close quarters engagements. And now let's take a look at recoil. And with this gun, the recoil is not that bad. Now, initially it's going to kick almost straight upwards. It's going to have a very slight lean to the left. And then after about 10 or so shots fired, that's where it's going to start curving back to the right. And in the meantime, it doesn't climb super fast by any means, especially considering the fire rate of this gun. And as a result, while this isn't the most accurate LMG out there, it's probably the least accurate of the LMGs, at least when you're factoring in horizontal recoil, which tends to be harder to control. At the end of the day, it's still very manageable, and I generally have no problem stretching my ranges out quite confidently, so I don't consider this to be a major weakness by any means on this gun. Next, let's talk handling, and across the board, we have the best handling stats in the LMG category. So that definitely leads itself well to being a more aggressive LMG. And something else that helps here is our base reload time, at least for an LMG, is not too bad at 4.15 seconds. Obviously, that's a very slow reload when compared to something like an assault rifle, for instance. But it's not bad for an LMG, and our base magazine capacity on this is 60 rounds. However, we can improve our reload speed and reduce our capacity using Fast Mag, or we can increase our capacity with Extended Mag 1 or Extended Mag 2. And then another option, of course, is the belt-fed mag, which gives us a total capacity of 500 rounds. And if you fire continuously, it will overheat after 45 rounds fired. And then if it overheats, it takes you a total of 6 seconds before you can fire again. And then finally, for the base stats of this gun, let's have a look at our movement speed values, which, just like with handling, we've got best-in-class movement speeds. Obviously, it's still an LMG, so it's not like this is competing with SMGs in this category, but it is better than the other LMGs at least. And now that we have all of that covered, let's talk about the Prestige attachment, which is the MFS Motion Strike Laser. And with this, it's quite interesting. For the upsides, it massively improves your hipfire spreads. It also improves your damage range and recoil stabilization, but that comes at the cost of your firing movement speed and your general movement speed values. And diving deeper here, for our range improvement that we see with that, it's a 15% improvement to our damage ranges, which is pretty nice. Then for our hipfire improvements, as you can see there, this is a ridiculous improvement. For both our minimum and maximum hipfire spread, these are so tight that it's practically pinpoint accurate at this point. There's very little spread there, meaning you can actually pick people off at very long distances. However, the downside here is your base walking speed is reduced from 4.6 down to 4.3 meters per second. That's not the bad part though. The part that really hits hard is the fact that the moment you pull the trigger, your movement speed drops to almost zero. So it effectively locks you in place and you become like a sentry turret almost when firing your gun with this. And that is a very important trade-off to be considering. Realistically, I'm not a big fan of this laser on its own. However, as you may have seen in a recent video covering the new attachment that came for this gun, it's incredible when paired with Akimbo, and I'll be sharing that build again toward the end of the video here. But before we get into that build, let's talk about some more normal builds on the XM325. And the first one I wanted to share is my aggressive stealth build. So with this one, we're using the Recoil suppressor to help a little bit with recoil control while keeping us off the radar. I've got the long barrel on here to help counteract that range reduction we see with the suppressor, and it more than compensates for that, so we actually see a net 10% improvement to our range value. For our magazine, I'm using the belt-fed mag on this. I just really like the belt-fed, so I don't have to worry about reloading as long as I'm not holding that trigger down for too long, so I don't trigger an overheat. Then for my rear grip, this is the one that helps the most with aim down sight speed. And then finally, for my stock, I'm using the control stock, which also improves recoil. And with this, we get a pretty decent aim down sight time for an LMG at least at 300 milliseconds. As you can see here, it's quite accurate, easy to control. I feel very confident stretching my ranges out quite far with this one. And I also really like the iron sights on this gun, so I don't feel like I'm really missing out all that much by not having an optic on this. And this is just a nice, versatile way to use this gun. You can be fairly aggressive with it and keep up just fine with something like an assault rifle. Or you can hang back at a bit of a distance and still be outgunning assault rifles. So that's the first one, and the one that really suits my playstyle nicely. However, if I'm using Gunfighter, this is the build I like using. With this, we're using an ELO sight on here. We once again have that Recoil suppressor. This time, I'm using the hybrid barrel, just so bullet velocity doesn't become as much of a bottleneck here, so we're only seeing a very slight reduction to range and bullet velocity with that combination. For my underbarrel, I'm using the lateral precision underbarrel, which helps the most with horizontal recoil control. We once again have that quick draw grip, which is going to be helping with aim down sight time. The control stock to help a bit more with recoil there. For my laser, I'm actually using the handling laser to help a little bit with aim down sight and sprint out time. And then finally, we're topping this off with buffer springs for even more recoil control. And this is just a really versatile way to use the XM325. You can be quite aggressive, just like with the previous build, but it's just got a few bonuses added in on top of that. However, just keep in mind, this time we're not using the belt-fed mag, so you are going to have to plan your reloads accordingly. And then finally, I almost always like sharing a build using the Prestige attachment, and as I said, I don't really like the Prestige attachment on this gun unless I'm pairing it with the new Akimbo attachment. So I'm basically just going to be resharing this build. I've already talked about this one in a dedicated video where I was breaking down Akimbo on it, but it's just such a good build if you like this kind of playstyle. So this is my Century Akimbo build, and with this, we're using the Motion Strike Laser and the Akimbo stock. So we're going to have one gun in each hand. And then on top of that, we're using the muzzle that's going to be helping with hipfire spread even more. We're going to be using the short barrel here, primarily to help a bit with sprint out time. And then we're piling on to that even more by using the Causeway rear grip, which is also helping a bunch with sprint out time. So we actually get a very fast sprint out time for an LMG at 114 milliseconds. And as you can see on the right-hand side there, we have a pinpoint accurate hipfire Akimbo gun. And since we have the ability to fire two guns at once, our time to kill up close is just 120 milliseconds, which is ridiculous. Also, this build is insane at taking out enemy streaks, as I showed off in that previous video, so a very different way to use it. Not a very traditional setup by any means, but an extremely powerful one. And there we have it. That's finally going to wrap it up today's gun guide on the XM325. And when it comes to my thoughts on this LMG, I personally love it. I think it feels great. I think it's a little underrated simply because I don't see it used all that often outside of the new akimbo setup, which I am seeing quite a bit. But before akimbo was added, it was pretty rare that I would see anybody use the XM325. And I think it's better than a lot of people give it credit for. It's a very versatile LMG, and I just think it feels great in my hands. Now, of course, those are just my thoughts, and I'd love to hear what you guys think about the XM325 in those comments down below. And if you guys have missed any of the previous gun guides, I'm finally all caught up on assault rifles, SMGs, and LMGs. I will leave a link to the playlist in the description of the video. If you enjoyed this one, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.